Welcome to Unchained TV's continuing coverage of Zoe Rosenberg's chicken rescue trial. And I got to tell you, it's been cray-cray. Now, what you're looking at is what you'd call stock footage of what's going on inside a courtroom. The reason is there are no cameras in the courtroom in Zoe Rosenberg's trial, not even a still camera. So there's no way for us to bring you what's actually happening. And additionally, the courtroom has been so packed with potential jurors that no observers have been able to get in. So we're trying to figure out what's going on behind closed doors. This is the jury selection process going on in the trial of Zoe Rosenberg, the 23-year-old animal and cruelty investigator for Direct Action Everywhere, who is potentially going to spend up to 5 years behind bars for rescuing 4 chickens from a slaughterhouse truck. And we're going to show you a little bit of that rescue in progress. This happened in June of 2023. And she says that she felt she had no other option because she had been investigating animal cruelty at these facilities for years and reporting her allegations to law enforcement. She says law enforcement did absolutely nothing. So ultimately, she felt she had the moral right, and she thought she had the legal right to go in and take those chickens out. And you can see this is a slaughter truck arrived at the slaughterhouse itself. These birds in this truck are all destined to be killed one way or another. Either killed for food or, if they're too sick, condemned. And condemnation records are at the heart of this case. A huge legal battle over whether or not the condemnation records that another animal cruelty investigator secretly photographed while also inside this facility can be shown to the jury. There you see the chickens that Zoe Rosenberg took out, 4 of them. She is looking for injured chickens there. She says she found them, and their names are Poppy, Ivy, Azalea, and Aster. And they went in this, each in a little bucket, taken and removed to get veterinary care. Now, again, we are in week 3 of this trial, day 9, and a jury is still not seated. So we haven't gotten to all opening statements. And it's dragging on so long. We're going to go to reporter Matthew, who is in Northern California. But first, let's hear from Zoe Rosenberg herself describing the previous day, day 8, which was yesterday, Monday, September 29th.
This is the first time that we're really, truly going to meet the jury. I'm setting up my tube feeds for the day before court. Just flushing the tube right now. I've been getting tube fed in the courtroom. Today is day 8 of trial and day 5 of jury selection. We're going to be questioning the potential jurors about their biases. So far, we've just been excusing people for hardship, so we haven't really talked to most of the jurors. So today should be interesting. We have almost 140 jurors coming in today. So those are all of the people who didn't get excused for hardships. We're bringing in a pretty large jury pool because a lot of people already have feelings about this case because it's been in the media, and there are just a lot of people who have ties to factory farming in Sonoma County, or for whatever reason just can't be unbiased as a juror member. We just got done with court. We only got about halfway through voir dire on the first 20 jurors, so we still have over 100 jurors to go, and a lot of jurors are indicating that they've already made up their mind somewhat about this case. Many of them already think I'm guilty, so we're definitely going to have to be careful to make sure that we get a fair jury to try this case.
Okay, straight out to Matthew Zerbil, who is in Northern California. You're not at court today. You're in an Airbnb because my understanding is you knew you weren't going to get into court because it's packed. But what do you make of the defendant Zoe Rosenberg's description of this glacial pace, Matthew?
Yeah, it certainly feels slow. I can't speak to how it goes in every other trial, but there's quite a large number of jurors, and a lot of them have a lot to talk about for bias because Zoe and DXC are very visible in Sonoma County. And so there's a lot to go through there. They had to pull in a pretty large number of jurors, both because of the expected length of the trial, and for many people would have hardships, and because they could be pretty polarized. And so that's the reason we weren't able to go into court yesterday. They're still working through the first panel, large set of jurors. They go through all of them at one time, the judge, prosecution, and then defense, I believe, in that order. And so we're not expecting there to be any more room today than there was yesterday. Yesterday, we were out in the hallway just waiting to see if enough people would be excused that we would be able to go in, and we were not the whole day.
Well, let me tell you this. I was actually thinking, because, running Unchained TV, there's a lot of work that involves running a streaming network. And you don't just go on live. You have to write a script. You have to schedule it. There's a lot that goes into it. And I thought, well, should I even do this today? But then I remembered, having covered many, many high profile trials over the years, including, everything from O.J. Simpson to Robert Blake. Remember the Beretta defendant, to Casey Anthony, to Jodi Arias. It's always those days that you think that nothing's going to happen. And you go out and you're out of pocket, you're getting coffee, you're going to the bank or whatever. And then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. And then your bosses are screaming at you, where were you? Okay. Because these big cases, and I will say this right now, the Zoe Rosenberg case has become of a level that it is a celebrity case. And they are like runaway freight trains, these celebrity cases. And this case has gotten so much media attention. It's been in the New York Times. It's been in the Los Angeles Times. It's been everywhere that it has become like a celebrity media case. And those cases, I will tell you, are runaway freight trains. You can never predict what is going to happen. And I've learned that firsthand. I'll give you just one example. The Casey Anthony trial, which I covered, the young woman accused of killing her daughter. And everybody said, oh, this is a slam dunk for the prosecution. She's definitely going to be convicted. Acquitted of all serious charges. What did they convict her of? Being a liar, which was obvious from the get-go. She's definitely a liar, and that's the only thing that they convicted her on. So you never know. Anybody who tells you it's a slam dunk for the prosecution or the defense, run in the other direction, because they do not know. Now, I want to go to you, Lindsay Baker, Unchained TV host, and ask you about this. While I was looking through angles today, I came across a letter that Zoe Rosenberg wrote to the 4 chickens that she rescued. And this is truly an emotional letter. Let me read it to you, and then we'll get commentary on the other side. There it is. And there are the 4 chickens: Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. And she wrote a letter to them saying, I often think about that night in June 2023. My life would have been a whole lot simpler, and I would have avoided the fear my mother felt when she realized I might spend half a decade behind bars. I would have finished my education and focused on learning without a bulky monitor bound to my ankle. I could have avoided so many stressful days of missing classes to drive to Santa Rosa for court. It's a long letter. I'm just giving you the highlights. But this is why she says it was all worth it. For the first time in their lives, in your lives, you were given care and space you needed to heal. For the first time in your lives, you were treated as individuals and not commodities. Today, you live out your lives in peace, exploring the outdoors together and never fearing human violence. So yes, Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. While I often think about what could have been, I never have any regrets. I appreciate every day you are alive, and I would do it all over again for the same outcome. No matter what happens in the course of this trial, it has truly been my honor to have played a part in your journey to freedom. Yours truly, Zoe. Wow. What is
Wow.
your response?
Well, I can't help but tear up. And the thing that comes to mind for me is yesterday when we were looking at some footage of some of the footage they will not show of the sick chickens. There was one that wasn't as bad as the others. And I saw its eye and the way it was, the sentience in it just floored me. I mean, it just crushed me, pulverized me. And, and then I think of what that experience, that little bit of watching a video for me, and what that experience, as Zoe describes, the things she's missing, the things that are giving her heavy stress when she's already has a compromised health situation, the worry she's putting on her mother, the experience she spent with these individuals, getting to know them and their personalities, the whole process. Imagine what that could be like for her. I could not imagine. But what is coming out of this is so important, and it could very well be the pivotal point where people start to really become aware of what is actually going on factory farms. So in that way, that's the good part of it. But the rest of it is just, it's just unspeakable.
And I had the same reaction. I teared up when I read that letter. And, I thought to myself, oh, you're saying you're doing so much work just to go live every day of this trial. Jane, you're doing nothing compared to the sacrifice that Zoe Rosenberg is making, potentially going to prison for 5 years for rescuing these 4 individuals, and then having the courage to say she would do it all over again. She has no regrets, and it has had an impact. Here is an op-ed in the Los Angeles Times as a result of this case saying why rescuing animals should never be a crime. One reason may be our contradictory relationship with animals. We recognize that animals can feel pain and we want to protect them. We also want to be able to raise and slaughter billions of them for food. When one dog is drowning in a pool or is overheating in a hot car, perhaps it's easy to see that trespassing or damaging property to save them is protecting them from a significant evil. But when the rescue is from an agricultural facility and the animals are the ones we raise for food, perhaps our human biases cloud our judgment. Aren't they different from dogs who live in our homes, we might think? Aren't we going to kill them anyway? We might rationalize. But the animals are all sentient creatures, and their suffering is significant. So what we're talking about, to put it mildly, is the evolution of the human species. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the moral arc of the universe is slow, but it bends toward justice. And as we have progressed as a human species over time, we've come to realize that those we regard as other are not so other. Whether it's people who have a different background, come from a different country, or a different hue of skin, or are a different gender. And so as we evolve as a species, we have these moments where it's like a light bulb goes off when we realize, wow, maybe I've been looking at it the wrong way. You've been in town, Matthew, for a couple of weeks now. Do you get any sense that the people in this, it's a heavily agricultural district in Northern California. However, it's also, it's considered, and this is one of the things that came out in the protest that DXC was having, is that it's considered sort of the ideal farming community, the community where everything's done right, everything's done humanely. And one of the reasons DXC focused on this area is that they felt there was a lot of greenwashing and humane washing going on. And the bottom line, there's no nice way to kill animals on a mass scale. So you've been in the community. Obviously, you don't know how these jurors are going to respond or how long it's going to take us to get 12 jurors and 4 alternates. But what's your sense of the cultural battle going on inside this community in Northern California?
We've had a lot of reactions to people. I think a lot of people definitely see Zoe's rescue, understand it. They're able to see the footage itself and hear the reports of the real necessity of what she did and are in support. That's a definite section that's growing. There's a lot of money that the ag industry has also spent to paint her as the villain of the story. And so there's definitely also people who feel very opposed to her, very opposed to animal rights activists. But I really think that our story is stronger. And so I think in the end, the net effect is you have a lot of people transitioning from maybe a passive support to a little bit more intentional active support. We've seen a lot of new activists join around this campaign. Even just at this trial, there have been new activists. And so I'm definitely hopeful. It's not a battle that's over or that's won in the hearts and minds of everyone in Sonoma County, but it is definitely one that is going on and that I think we can win.
Well, I'm just putting up a banner that says the right to rescue because that's really the very heart of the case. I also want to point out that the California Poultry Federation says Petaluma Poultry, that's the facility from which Zoe rescued these 4 chickens, has long been a leader in free-range and organic poultry, and they're known for taking great care of their birds. We also have a statement from the company saying that they're dedicated to the highest standards of animal care, give their birds space to roam, and a healthy, balanced diet. False claims about animal care standards are pushed by an extreme group, DXC, with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and imposing a radical agenda would threaten the livelihoods of Sonoma County farmers and the food security of millions of people who rely on animal agriculture. And, you know, that to me is a very interesting argument. And by the way, if you want to learn more about Purdue's stance on this, and we invite them on any time to respond further, we'd love to dialogue with you. You can go to corporate.purduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care. But getting back to the statement that this, you know, is going to threaten the food security of millions of people who rely on animal agriculture, there's a whole other school of thought. The interesting commonality is that, yet, I think Direct Action Everywhere would readily agree that they want to phase out animal agriculture. In fact, they had a measure called Measure J on the ballot in Sonoma County that failed, but it was to make a point that would have phased out concentrated animal feeding operations, which are these massive farms that 99% of all animals consumed for food are produced. So one of the things that is being brought out in this trial is the fantasy of what's really happening behind those closed doors and the reality of what is happening. So you have this brochure that was mailed out. It's a glossy brochure with gorgeous photographs. DXC says that they reverse researched these photos and that they are not from Sonoma County. Some of them are not even from the United States. Bucolic imagery versus what they say is the reality of modern day factory farming. And if you see these animals struggling on the ground there, that's free range. You know, a free range means that it's just cage free. But what Direct Action Everywhere is saying is that cage free, and how it's described as, you know, animals having the right to do all sorts of natural behaviors. They're saying that the actual technical definition of cage free is a far cry from the bucolic imagery that animal agriculture disseminates to the public. So essentially, this has become a battle for the hearts and minds of people in Sonoma County and by extension, consumers in general, because let's face it. First of all, I don't think anybody's going to contend at all that whatever was discovered here is unique to this particular facility. In fact, there were previous trials where there were other companies, like a big company by the name of Foster Farms, for example, was a previous case. So what essentially I think DXE is saying is this is industrialized animal agriculture. And there is absolutely no nice way to kill 140,000 chickens per minute, which is what globally on the planet is happening, which amounts to 202 million per day and over 74 billion per year. And this image is where Zoe is claiming that birds are boiled alive, something the company disputes. And again, we invite the company on anytime to further respond to that. But what do you make of that, Lindsay Baker, the notion that this is really a tug of war? I've used the phrase David and Goliath battle. This week, I'm using tug of war for how our culture is going to deal with the issue of animals raised for food. Because I think we can all agree, however you feel about it, we can all agree that a lot of the bucolic imagery, okay, that's put out does not conform to the reality of what's behind those closed doors.
Well, I would say that if this footage isn't allowed in the courtroom and Petaluma Farms has nothing to hide, surely they have footage of their daily activities. They have cameras all over. Why don't they turn those over to the public? Let us see day to day what actually goes on. If in fact this is not what's going on, that's what I would like to see. But as far as hearts and minds, it's the proof is right there in the pudding. They are forcing footage not to be seen. There is footage that proves there are things going on there that would turn anybody's stomach. And they don't want that to be seen. They're doing everything they can. So if that's an isolated incident that happened maybe once in a million years or whatever they're claiming, I know that's absurd, but let us see what is going on. Open the doors. If nothing is going on that's wrong, open the doors. But when they do, even if it was a perfect scenario, as you say, there's no kind way to kill a being that wants to live. There is no way. And particularly in those millions, these numbers, it's incredible. And
it boggles the mind when you think of 74 billion chickens.
Billion.
And why is this trial so important? Because chickens account for about 90% or more of all animals killed for food. So people might think, oh, this is, not a serious case. No, if you look at the numbers of animals killed for food, chickens are at the top. This is figures, number of land animals killed for food globally in 2022, over 75 billion chickens. Every other species pales in terms of numbers. So for those who are like, oh, what a ridiculous, why would you even think about chickens? Chickens have, the word chicken is an insult. You say, you call somebody chicken if they exhibit cowardice, and that is called speciesist language. We've actually demonized these animals to make them seem not even human, in terms of not even sentient is what I meant, but that was a Freudian slip because we all have a lot in common. And I do want to play this clip from a previous trial where Wayne Shung, who is the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere and really the leader of the open rescue movement. And I will show you a picture of him. He's been arrested numerous times and put on trial. He is a law professor. He's an extremely brilliant person who has just really created the right to rescue movement, along with other people who've joined him, but he's been a leader in this, and he was put on trial. And the prosecutor who tried to convince him to convict him and lost actually compared the animals that he rescued to inanimate objects. And the jurors, after acquitting Wayne Chung, said one of the reasons they did is that they were offended. They were offended by the argument, the closing argument of the prosecutor, where he compared animals, in that case, pigs, to inanimate objects. Let's hear that closing argument. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen, they were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Chung stated he didn't want to return. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store and you saw a can with dents in it, and you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a dent. It has the potential of going bad. I better rescue that can, put it in my purse, take it out of the store. Or imagine you're at DQ, you see a dripping ice cream cone up there. The clerk just put on the counter. Oh dear, that cone is dripping off the side. I better take it so that it doesn't make a mess on the floor.
Now, when we look back at things that people did in previous centuries and we laugh and we say, how barbaric, or we are alarmed, how absurd, how ridiculous. We can see it with 2020 hindsight from the perspective of history. But there's this guy very seriously thinking he's scoring really good points, making the case that these pigs, and pigs are smarter than dogs. They have the IQ of a 5-year-old child, according to some studies, are no different than a dented can or a dripping ice cream cone. To me, that closing argument epitomizes what's wrong with our society as it stands now, and why this case is historic in that Zoe Rosenberg is putting her own freedom at stake to make a case that that mentality, which persists, every consumer who buys chicken is in one way, shape, or form co-signing that mentality. She's putting her life at risk to say, no, that's morally wrong. What are your thoughts, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the industry has a lot of bucolic imagery, but they can show at most, 10, 20, 30 chickens in one picture because their pictures are stock pictures and they can only show that many chickens while it's still looking bucolic. Whereas we can show pictures that actually have all of the chickens in their facilities, tens of thousands in a single warehouse. And I do think that difference is really stark and has really impacted a lot of people. That's a lot of what got me into, the roles, the reasons why I am here today. And I think that drives a lot of people around here.
So my final question to you, because we have vowed that we're going to cover this trial every single day. Again, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. There's voir dire going on. We know that it's extremely slow, this process. There's no cameras in the courtroom, and therefore we're bringing you some stock footage of what could be happening week 3, day 9. There are hundreds of people who have sought now hardship requests to be removed from the jury, and those that remain are being questioned, but it's happening at an extremely slow pace. As somebody pointed out, there are murder trials that have been finished, and a person convicted or acquitted in less time than this case, which hasn't even seated 12 jurors and 4 alternates. So we're waiting for opening statements to begin. The hope is that they might begin Monday. There is no court, by the way, for you trial watchers on Wednesdays. So we're dark tomorrow. We're back on Thursday. And, one of the things that I'd heard at the beginning is that this judge, and it's not the fault of the judge, it seems like everybody I've talked to who's gone in there says the judge has been pretty fair, but he has 400 other cases that he has to handle. So he has cases that he has to handle in the morning. And then in the afternoon, these jurors are being questioned first by the judge, then by the prosecution, and then ultimately by the defense. Now, the both sides agreed to a jury questionnaire, which was what the jurors filled out at the very start. But there's a lot of argument and objections when it comes to questioning the jurors verbally. And that's where we don't know whether, for example, the defense is going to be able to say, hey, have you received this brochure in the mail? Stand with Sonoma County's poultry workers. And if so, what did you think of it? Because if I were a defense attorney, I absolutely would want to do that. Remember, it says right here, preserve Sonoma County's agricultural heritage, support farmers and employees. So this is really a very proactive brochure, an expensive, glossy, sent to thousands of people in the county, and those people are prospective jurors. So I would like to know, as a defense attorney, have you seen this? Did you read it? What do you think about it? And if they said, yeah, I read it and thought it was great, I would say dismiss this jury. Now, there are 10 peremptory challenges. That means 10 things, 10 people, either side can say, I don't want this person. And they don't have to give an explanation. They're not allowed to do it in a sense that would imply any kind of bigotry or prejudice, but they have these 10 peremptory challenges each. So it's a complicated chess game that's going on right now. What we can tell you, the breaking news is the voir dire is in process. It's been going on. This is the second day of really hardcore voir dire, trying to seat this jury. And we will be back on Thursday. We can't even tell you exactly when, because unlike most trials, it's always a question mark of when is he going to start? Is he going to start at 11? Is he going to start at 1:30? But we will be back between 12 and 1 at some point. I would guess probably 12:30. That would be what I would think, 12:30 Pacific on Thursday. We will be back. And I urge everybody, share this video out, join the trial, be part of history. If you watch, comment, and share out this video to as many people in groups as you can, because guess what? There is no mainstream media there for the bulk of the trial. Sure, they've gotten articles prior to trial, and I'm sure they will get articles and follow up upon conviction, or maybe even closing statements. But this trial is history in the making. And that's why Unchained TV has said we are going to cover this trial every single day. And we are the only news organization that is covering this trial. So I urge you also to support Unchained TV. We are a 501c3 nonprofit news network to cover the issues like this and the entire field of plant-based and cruelty-free. That's our perspective. Just like MSNBC is on the liberal side, Fox News is the conservative side, we are the cruelty-free side. We need your support. Thank you for being a part of it. See you on Thursday.